Okay, so we are starting today in book 3 of the Shrimad Bhagavata with discourse 20. So we just finished the Varaha Lila of Varahavatar rescuing the earth from Hiranyaksha. And the next discourse, still in the dialogue between Vidura and Maharishi Maitreya, is on the various species of living beings created by Brahma. Shaunaka said, he's one of the people who's hearing this narration, having secured a foothold in the shape of the earth, O son of Sutta, or Roma Harshana, that's Ugrasravasoti who is narrating this, what means did Swayambhuva Manu adopt for evolving the other creatures that were yet to see the light? Vidura was a great devotee of the Lord and a devoted friend of Sri Krishna. He abandoned his own elder brother, Dhritarashtra, along with the latter's sons, because they had offended against Sri Krishna. Sprung from the loins of the sage Dvaipayana Veda Vyasa, he was in no way inferior to him in glory. Nay, he was devoted to Sri Krishna with all his being and attached to his devotees. Further cleansed of all his sins by resorting to sacred places, what else did he inquire of the sage Maitreya, the foremost among the knowers of truth, on meeting him at Kushavarta, that's another name of Haridwara, where he was living? In the course of their conversation, O Sutta, there must have proceeded sacred stories centering round the lotus feet of Sri Hari, and hence capable of wiping out all sins, like the waters of the holy Ganga that have their source in those very feet. May God bless you. Please narrate to us those very stories of the Lord, whose noble deeds are the only achievements worth glorifying. What man who has his aesthetic sense developed would feel sated with drinking in the nectar-like stories of Sri Hari's pastimes? As in, would feel like they'd had enough, like they didn't want more. Questioned thus by the sages staying in Naimisha, Ugrasrava, with his mind fixed on the Lord, said to them, "Listen." Sutta continued. So I guess the sages in Naimisha got an extended version of this beyond what Shuka narrated to Parikshit, because we're zooming all the way out here to hear these ones. Sutta continued, Vidura, a descendant of King Bharata, was delighted to hear the story of the Lord who, having assumed by his own divine will the semblance of a boar, had enacted the sport of lifting up the earth from the bottom of the ocean and indifferently killed the demon Hiranyaksha. He then spoke to the sage as follows. Vidura said, knowing as you do things unperceived by us, tell me, O holy sage, what Brahma, the lord of Prajapatis, did for the purpose of creating living beings after evolving the Prajapatis. How did the sage Marichi and the other Brahmanas, as well as Swayambhuvamanu, evolve the creation in obedience to Brahma's command? Did they evolve it in conjunction with their wives, or remaining independent in their action, or did they all jointly produce it? Maitreya replied, when the equilibrium of the three gunas, constituting prakriti or primordial matter, got disturbed through the agency of prarabdha, prarabdha karma, meaning when the latent karmas of the jivas from the previous kalpa resumed activity and started manifesting, the working of which is difficult to comprehend, the Supreme Spirit presiding over prakriti and kala, or time, as well as through mere proximity to the Lord, the Mahat Tattva, the principle of cosmic intelligence, was evolved therefrom. From the Mahat Tattva, in which the element of Rajas predominates, as impelled by the destiny of the jivas, was evolved the ego, which is of three kinds, sattvika, or rajasic, or tamasic. And the ego, in its turn, evolved many a group of five principles, such as the five gross elements, and so on. Also the five subtle elements, the five senses of perception, the five organs of action, the five deities presiding over the five senses, and the five deities presiding over the five organs of action. Severally unable to produce the material universe, they combined with the help of the divine energy and were able to evolve a shining egg. A shining egg here is Hiranyagarbha. I've mentioned before Garbha, it does mean egg, but it also means womb or uterus. It also means embryo. For over 1,000 years, the egg lay on the waters of the causal ocean in a lifeless state. After that, the Lord entered it. That's probably also 1,000 Daiva years. So 360,000 of our years. After that, the Lord entered it as its presiding deity. From the navel of the Lord, as presiding over the egg, sprang a lotus that possessed the dazzling splendor of 1,000 suns and was intended to be the abode of all living beings. Brahma himself emanated from this very lotus. When the Lord who sleeps on the waters forming the support of the cosmos entered his heart as the inner controller, Brahma the creator started creating hierarchies of the various worlds according to the plan evolved by him in the preceding kalpas. At the very outset, he evolved out of his shadow, or ignorance, the 5 varieties of avidya, the 5 varieties of ignorance. Tamisra, Antadamisra, Tamas, Moha, and Mahamoha. Brahma threw off that body of his in the form of a shadow, for he did not like it, made up as it was of darkness or ignorance. The yakshas and rakshasas, who had sprung from the shadow of ignorance, took possession of that body, which this is the body that Brahma cast off like a dark fog that covered the world. They took possession of that body, which continued in the form of night, and is the source of hunger and thirst. Overpowered by hunger and thirst, they, the yakshas and rakshasas, ran to devour him from all sides. Spare him not, eat him up, they all cried, oppressed as they were with hunger and thirst. Overpowered, yes. The god Brahma grew nervous and pleaded with them, "Pray eat me not, but spare me, for you have all been born as sons to me, O yakshas and rakshasas." Shining with glory, he created before all others the divinities that had the element of sattva or goodness predominant in them. When Brahma dropped that effulgent form out of which he had evolved those divinities, and which now figured as daytime, the gods sportfully took possession of it. The glorious Brahma evolved from his hinder part, the demons, who are excessively fond of women. Being very lustful, they came up to him for copulation. The worshipful Brahma first laughed, but finding the shameless asuras close upon him, he grew indignant and ran out of fear in great haste. He approached Sri Hari, the bestower of boons, who dispels the agony of those running up to him for succor, and who, in order to show his grace to his devotees, reveals himself in a form answering their conception, meaning that Sri Hari appears to devotees as they expect him to. Whatever form you conceive in your mind, that's the form in which he will show himself. "Protect me, O Supreme Spirit," said Brahma. "I created these beings as directed by you, but these sinful creatures are out to copulate with me, my lord. You are the only one capable of ending the affliction of distressed people, as also the one inflicting agony on those who never resort to your feet." The Lord, who can distinctly see the mind of others, perceived Brahma's distress and said to him, "Cast off this impure body of yours." Thus commanded by the Lord, he dropped it. The body thus shuffled off by Brahma took the form of the evening twilight, when the day and night meet, and which kindles passion or kama. The asuras, who are passionate or passionate by nature, or whose nature is ruled by sensual pleasure, dominated as they are by the element of rajas, took it, the twilight, for a damsel, whose lotus feet resounded with the tinkling of anklets, whose eyes were wild with intoxication, and whose hips were covered by a fine cloth over which shone a girdle. Her breasts were projecting upwards because of their clinging to each other, and were too contiguous to admit of any intervening space. She had a shapely nose and beautiful rows of teeth. A lovely smile played on her lips, and she cast a sportful glance at the asuras. Adorned with dark tresses, she was hiding herself as it were out of shyness. Perceiving that girl, O Vidura, the asuras were all infatuated with love. Oh, what a beauty, what a rare self-control, what a budding youth. In the midst of us all who are passionately longing for her, she is moving about like one absolutely free from passion. Indulging in speculations of various kinds about the evening twilight that appeared to them as endowed with the form of a young woman, the asuras of wicked mind treated her with respect and fondly asked her, "Who are you? Whose daughter may you be, O pretty one, having thighs smooth and tapering like the stem of a plantain tree? And what can be the object of your coming over here, O proud damsel? Why do you tantalize us, luckless as we are, with the priceless commodity of your beauty? Whosoever you may be, O tender girl, we are fortunate in having been able to see you. While playing with a ball, you agitate the mind of the lookers on. When you strike the bouncing ball against the ground with your hand again and again, O praiseworthy woman, your lotus feet stay not at one place. Oppressed by the weight of your full breasts, your waist gets fatigued, and your clear vision grows dull, as it were. Pray braid your comely hair." Thus the asuras of clouded understanding took the evening twilight, that showed itself in the form of a young woman, for an alluring damsel, and seized her. With a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma. So this means we're kind of ending these stories of the Yakshas and Rakshasas when they inhabit the body of Brahma in the form of the darkness of night, that they became these hungry nocturnal spirits. When the asuras seize the twilight, they kind of assume the twilight as their natural abode, the time that they dwell in. With a laugh full of deep significance, the worshipful Brahma evolved by his own loveliness, which seemed to enjoy itself by itself, hosts of Gandharvas and Apsaras. After that, he gave up that shining and beloved form made of moonlight. Vishvavasu and the other Gandharvas themselves gladly took possession of it, and dwell as spirits of beauty in the moonlight. The glorious Brahma evolved out of his sloth, the bhutas and pishachas, but he closed his eyes when he saw them stand naked with their hair disheveled. The bhutas and pishachas themselves took possession of the body in the form of a yawn thrown off by Brahma, the Lord of beings. It is also known as sleep, which causes the mouth of living beings to eject running saliva. So a kind of heavy, overpowering sleep, the kind of like a drooling sleep, is sort of the quality of the bhutas and pishachas. And those very bhutas and pishachas attack men who are rendered impure in this way, and such attack of theirs is spoken of as insanity. Recognizing himself as full of vigor and energy, the worshipful Brahma, the Lord of beings, evolved out of his invisible form the hosts of the Sadhyas and the Pitris. The Pitris themselves took possession of that invisible body, the source of their existence. It is through the medium of this invisible body of the Pitris that those well versed in the ritual offer oblations to the Sadhyas and the Pitris in the form of their departed ancestors on the occasion of the Sraddha. By his faculty of remaining hidden from view, Brahma evolved the species of living beings called the Siddhas and the Vidyadharas, and gave them that marvelous form of his known by the name of Antardhana, the faculty of remaining hidden from view. One day, Brahma, the Lord of beings, beheld his own reflection in water, and admiring himself through that, evolved the Kimpurushas as well as Kinnaras out of that very reflection. They took possession of that shadowy form which was left by Brahma. That is why they sing his praises, by recounting his exploits at daybreak every morning with their spouses. So this is another thing, Andy, I remember you were asking last week about worship of Brahma. There are some other types of beings who worship Brahma a lot more than humans do, like the Kinnara and Kimpurusha races, and several others that we'll read about. He's worshipped more in some lokas than in others.
Wow.
Once Brahma lay with his body stretched at full length, much concerned over the fact that the work of creation had not proceeded apace, and in a sullen mood shed that body too. The hair that dropped from that body, as he apparently pulled some hair out in a fit of excitement, or of like kind of frantic creative impulse, were transformed into snakes, dear Vidura, while even as the body crawled along with its hands and feet contracted as if taking the form of a great primal serpent, there sprang from it ferocious serpents and nagas with their necks dilated in the form of a hood. One day, Brahma, the self-born creator, felt as if the object of his life had been accomplished. At that time, he evolved out of his mind last of all the Manus, who promote the welfare of the world. To them, the self-possessed creator gave his own human form. On seeing them, those who had been created earlier applauded Brahma. O creator of the universe, we are glad what you have produced is well done. Since ritual acts have been placed on a sound footing in this human form, we shall all share the sacrificial oblations with it. Having equipped himself with austere penance, adoration, yoga, and samadhi, accompanied by dispassion, etc., and having controlled his senses, Brahma, the first seer, the Adi Rishi, evolved the rishis, his beloved sons. To each one of these, the unborn creator gave a part of his own body, which was characterized by deep meditation, concentration of mind, supernatural power, austerity, adoration, and dispassion. Thus ends the 20th discourse in Book 3 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Discourse 21. The sage Kardama practices austere penance, and the Lord confers a boon on him. Vidura said, the line of Swayambhuva Manu was the one most esteemed. Pray give me, O worshipful sage, an account of that race, the progeny of which multiplied through sexual union. The two sons of Swayambhuva, Priyavrata and Uttanapada, piously ruled over the entire globe with its 7 divisions, 7 dvipas. So that's actually more than the globe of the earth. We'll get in book 5 to describing the scope of the Bhumandala, the earth circle with its 7 dvipas. That's a huge domain, far beyond the loka that we live in. His daughter, known by the name of Devahuti, o holy Brahmana, has been spoken of, that being Manu's daughter, Swayambhuva Manu's daughter, Devahuti, has been spoken of by you as the spouse of the sage Kardama, a Prajapati, or a lord of created beings, O sinless one. How many issues did that great yogi beget through that princess who was endowed with the 8 limbs of yoga? Pray tell me all this, keen as I am to hear it. Similarly, O holy sage, tell me how the worshipful Ruchi, another Prajapati, and Daksha, another Prajapati and also a direct son of Brahma, procreated children after securing as their wife the other 2 daughters of Swayambhuva Manu, Akuti and Prasuti, respectively. Maitreya replied, commanded by Brahma with the words, beget children, the worshipful Kardama practiced penance on the bank of the river Sarasvati for a period of 10,000 years. During that penance, the sage Kardama devoutly waited upon Sri Hari, the bestower of blessings on those who flee to him for protection, through various modes of worship, accompanied by deep meditation. Pleased, O Vidura, the lotus-eyed Lord showed himself to him at the beginning of Satya Yuga, in a form consisting of his own divine essence, which is ordinarily known only through the divine word of the Vedas. Kardama beheld the Lord in his purely divine form, effulgent like the sun, wearing a garland of white lotuses and water lilies and clad in spotless silk, his lotus face fringed with sleek, dark locks of curly hair. Adorned with a crown and earrings, he held his conch, the Sudarshana chakra, and mace in 3 of his hands, and a white lily to play with in his 4th hand, while his smiling look captivated the heart. Having set his lotus feet on the shoulders of Garuda, he stood in the air with a golden streak on his breast and the famous Kaustubha gem suspended from his neck. Having realized the ambition of his life, and full of joy, the sage fell prostrate with his head touching the ground, and began to extol the Lord in the following words, with a mind naturally full of love and his palms joined. The sage said, Ah, the fruit of our eyes has been fully attained today by beholding you, the repository of all goodness, whose sight, O praiseworthy Lord, is coveted even by yogis established in yoga after going through higher and still higher births. Your lotus feet are a veritable vessel to take one across the ocean of mundane existence. Only they who have been deprived of their senses by your Maya worship those feet with a view to attaining the trivial and momentary pleasures of sense that can be had even in hell. You, however, O Lord, bestow on them such pleasures of sense too. You are a wish-yielding tree, while my heart is impure, tainted by carnality. Therefore, desirous of marrying a girl of like disposition, that may prove a veritable cow of plenty in my married life, yielding the three objects of human pursuit, yielding dharma, artha, and kama, I too have likewise sought the shelter of your feet, which are the source of all blessings. Smitten by desire, this world, O Lord of the universe, is bound by the cord of the word, Veda, uttered by you, the Lord of created beings. Following the ways of the world, in other words, like a leash on an animal, is what he's saying there, that the world, like a beast, is bound by the cord. Following the ways of the world, I too, O embodiment of unalloyed virtue, bear offerings in the shape of dutiful obedience to you who appear as time, turning their back on worldly-minded men as well as on the beasts like me who follow them. Your devotees seek the protection of your feet that afford shelter like an umbrella and meet the requirements of the body in the shape of hunger, thirst, and so on, by drinking the inebriating nectar of your praises uttered before one another. Your wheel in the shape of time, the Kala Chakra, which has three navels in the shape of the three divisions of the year, consisting of 4 months each, rotates around the axle of the imperishable Brahman. It has 13 spokes representing the 13 months. That's including Adhika Masa or Purushottama Masa, the leap month of the Vedic calendar. Most years there's 12 months, but every about 2.5 years there's a 13th month. 360 joints, corresponding to the number of days in a year. 6 rims for the 6 seasons, or 6 sections of the rim. And numberless leaves in the shape of the unnumberable moments carved on it. Though cutting short the span of life of the entire creation by its revolution, this wheel of tremendous velocity cannot touch the lifespan of these your devotees. O Lord, though one, you assume in yourself the Yoga Maya, which is no other than you, with a view to creating the universe, and with the help of potencies like Sattva, etc., emanating from Yoga Maya, you bring forth and preserve, and will then reabsorb the universe into yourself, even as a spider spins a cobweb, maintains it, and then swallows it up. Although it is not liked by you, O Supreme Lord, that you should provide us by dint of your Maya with the pleasures of sense, let them come to us for our ultimate good, when you have appeared before us in a form adorned with a splendid wreath of tulsi leaves, a form which looks finite through Maya. Although by virtue of your self-realization you have ever ignored the consequences of your activity, you have conducted the affairs of the world by your own Maya and shower the desired blessings even on those who adore you with some interested motive. I repeatedly bow to you, whose lotus feet are worthy of reverence to all. Maitreya resumed. Sincerely extolled in the aforesaid words, Lord Vishnu, whose navel is distinguished by a lotus and who shone on the shoulders of Garuda, replied in accents sweet as nectar, his eyebrows gracefully moving as he regarded the sage with a smile full of affection. The Lord said, having come to know what was in your mind, I have already arranged that for which you have worshipped me well through discipline of the mind and senses, etc. Worship offered to me by those who have solely fixed their mind on me, particularly by people like you, O Lord of created beings, can never go in vain. Emperor Swayambhuva Manu, son of Brahma, who is celebrated for his righteous acts, rules over the earth bounded by the 7 oceans, having his seat in Brahmavarta. Brahmavarta is a place in India. It's later called Kurukshetra. Specifically, the definition of Brahmavarta is the land between the rivers Sarasvati and Drashadvati. Obviously, that definition doesn't hold good today in modern India because the river Sarasvati has dried up. But that's roughly where it was. It's the region of Kurukshetra. It's in like what's now like southern and western Haryana and part of Punjab in modern India. Accompanied by his spouse, Queen Shatarupa, that royal sage who knows the secret of dharma, will come to see you, O holy Brahmana, the day after tomorrow, and will give away his dark-eyed daughter, who has attained marriageable age, is possessed of a noble character and commendable virtues, and is on the lookout for a match, to you, who are in every way worthy of her, O Lord of created beings. Being just the type on which you have set your heart all these long years, that princess, O holy sage, will soon be yours and will serve you to your heart's content. She will bring forth 9 daughters out of the seed sown in her by you, and through the daughters sprung from your loins, sages like Marichi will duly beget children. And with your heart cleansed by properly carrying out my command, and having resigned to me the fruit of all your acts, you will finally attain to me. Showing compassion to living beings, you will attain self-realization, and giving assurance of safety to all, you will perceive your own self as well as the universe identified in me and myself in you. Manifesting a part of my divine being through your wife, Devahuti, along with your 9 daughters, O great sage, I shall instruct her in the system of philosophy that deals with the ultimate principles or categories, the Sankhya philosophy. Maitreya went on. Having thus spoken to the sage Kardama, the Lord, who reveals himself only when the senses are turned inward, departed from the lake called Bindu Sarovara, which was encircled by the river Sarasvati. That's where Kardama did his tapas, on the shore of the lake Bindu Sarovara. I'm assuming that what we mean by the lake being encircled by the river was that it's a pool of the river, where the river slows down and grows very wide and then flows out at the other end. A lake in the course of the river. While the sage stood looking on, the Lord left by the path leading to Vaikunta, a path which is extolled by all great siddhas, listening to the hymns forming the basis of the Sama Veda and uttered by the wings of Garuda. So there's a footnote here. The Sruti says that the 2 metrical divisions, the 2 Chandahas of Samaveda, Brihad and Ratantara, form the 2 wings of Garuda, and that whenever Garuda flies, the hymns of the Samaveda sing from the feathers of Garuda's wings. So that's what that was referring to. Even after the departure of the Lord, the worshipful sage Kardama stayed on the strand of the Bindu Sarovara, awaiting the time. Swayambhuva Manu, with his spouse, Shatarupa, mounted his gold-plated chariot, and taking his daughter Devahuti along with him and journeying all over the globe, reached the aforementioned hermitage of the sage Kardama, who had just completed his vow, on the very day foretold by the Lord, O Vidura. The holy Bindu Sarovara, which overflowed with the water of the river Sarasvati and was resorted to by hosts of eminent sages, and whose water was not only wholesome, but also sweet as nectar, was so called Bindu Sarovara, because drops of tears had fallen thereon from the eyes of the Lord, overwhelmed as he was by extreme compassion directed towards the sage who had sought his protection. The lake was rich in fruits and flowers of all seasons, inasmuch as it was surrounded by clusters of sacred trees and creepers, affording shelter to holy beasts and birds that uttered various cries, and was adorned with rows of forest trees. It resounded with the notes of overjoyed birds, and was the scene of the humming of intoxicated bees. Merry peacocks proudly danced, and merry cuckoos called one another. The lake was hemmed round by Kadamba, Champaka, Ashoka, Karanja, Bakula, Asana, Kunda, Mandara, Kutaja, and young mango trees, and echoed with the pleasing notes of Karandavas, which is a type of duck, plavas, swans, ospreys, waterfowls, cranes, chakravakas, and chakoras. And it was infested with deer, boars, porcupines, gayals, which are like wild cows, non-domesticated cows, elephants, baboons, lions, monkeys, mongooses, and musk deer. Entering that most sacred spot with his daughter Devahuti and going near the sage, the first monarch, Swayambhuva Manu, saw him sitting there in his hermitage, having propitiated the sacred fire by pouring oblations into it. He shone most brilliant with his body, which, though engaged in austere penance for a long time, was not much emaciated, because the Lord had cast his affectionate glance at him, and he had also quaffed with his ears the nectar flowing from the moon-like words of the Lord. The sage was of high stature, had eyes big as the petals of a lotus, wore matted locks, was clad in rags, and looked untidy, like an unpolished gem. Seeing the monarch come to his hermitage and bowing before him, the sage greeted him with benedictions and received him with due honor. When the king had sat down, calm and collected, after receiving the sage's attentions, the latter, the sage, who recalled the instructions of the Lord, spoke to him, delighting him with his soft accents. The tour undertaken by you, O Lord, is surely intended to protect the virtuous and kill the wicked, embodying as you do the protecting energy of Srihari. It is you who assume the forms of the sun god, the moon god, the god of fire, Indra, the lord of paradise, the wind god. These are, of course, Surya, Chandra, Agni, Vayu, Yama, Dharma, and Varuna, as and when necessary. Hail to you who are no other than Lord Vishnu. If you do not go about like the sun in your bejeweled chariot that ever leads you to victory, twanging your fierce bow, inspiring terror in the heart of the wicked by the presence of your very chariot, taking a huge army and shaking the terrestrial globe by the tread of your hosts, all the moral laws governing the various varnas and ashramas, and made by the Lord himself, O king, will be broken that very moment by impious men, which will be a deplorable state of things. Nay, unrighteousness will flourish on account of grasping and unruly men. If you give up all thought of the world will fall into the clutches of impious men and perish. Nevertheless, I ask you, O valiant king, the purpose for which you have come here. With a glad heart we shall meet your wishes. Thus ends the 21st discourse in Book 3 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. Discourse 22, the sage Kardama accepts the hand of Devahuti. Maitreya continued. The emperor felt abashed, as it were, to hear his exalted virtues and exploits thus extolled, and replied to the sage, who was leading a retired life. The Manu said, the cosmic being who is Veda personified evolved you, rich in austere penance, learning, and yoga, and averse to the pleasures of sense, from his mouth for the protection of his own self in the form of the Vedas, because it is the Brahmins who preserve the Vedas and pass it on. And the Vedas being a form of the Lord, they are the protectors of that form. And for the protection of the Brahmanas, the same 1,000-footed being evolved us, the Kshatriyas, from his 1,000 arms. Hence they speak of the Brahmana race as his heart, and the Kshatriya race as his outer limbs. That is why the Brahmana and the Kshatriya protect each other as well as their own self, while, as a matter of fact, the Lord himself, who is both the cause and the effect, and yet immutable, protects them through each other. All my doubts have been resolved by your very sight, inasmuch as your holiness has of your own accord lovingly pointed out the duties of a king who is anxious to protect his subjects. It is my good fortune that I have been able to see you, for you cannot be easily perceived by those who have not subdued their mind. And I am all the more fortunate, in that I have touched with my head the blessed dust of your feet. Luckily enough, I have been instructed by you, and thus a great favor has been bestowed on me, and thank God I have listened with open ears to your charming words. Be graciously pleased to listen, O sage, to the prayer of my humble self, troubled in mind due to affection for my daughter Devahuti. This daughter of mine, a sister to Priyavrata and Uttanapada, is on the lookout for a match worthy of her point in age, character, and good qualities, etc. The moment she heard from the sage Narada of your noble character, learning, comely appearance, young age, and other virtues, she fixed her mind on you. Therefore accept her as your wife, O chief of the Brahmanas, since I offer her with reverence and because she is in every way fit to be your helpmate in the discharge of your household duties. It is not commendable, even on the part of one who is absolutely free from attachment, much less of him who is addicted to the pleasures of sense, to spurn an object of desire that has come of itself. He who rejects an object offered to him and begs it of a miser loses his widespread reputation, and his pride is humbled by the disrespectful behavior of others. I heard of you, O wise man, that you were prepared to marry. Therefore accept her hand which is being offered by me, since you have not taken a vow of perpetual celibacy. The sage replied, Certainly I have a desire to marry, and your daughter too has not yet been affianced to anyone else. Hence, our marriage, according to the Brahma method, will be quite in the fitness of things. This is a reference to the 8 methods of marriage in Vedic society. The Brahma method is the one that Brahmins normally use. That desire of mine, which has been duly recognized in the procedure laid down in your scriptures, may be realized through this daughter of yours. Interesting that he says your scriptures. This refers to the Dharma Shastras, which are the scriptures governing the conduct of kings like Manu. Who would not accept with honor your daughter Devahuti, who overshadows, as it were, by her artless splendor, the very luster of her ornaments? This is kind of a classic Vedic compliment to say that the ornaments someone is wearing are beautified by them rather than vice versa. When she was sporting on the top of her royal mansion, following her ball with bewildered eyes, the elegance of her person heightened by the tinkling ornaments on her feet, Vishvavasu, a Gandharva well known for his comeliness, was stupefied with infatuation to see her and fell down from his aerial car. What wise man would not welcome her? So he was like in a Vimana in the sky and like peering over the side at the beauty of Devahuti playing with a ball on her palace roof. He fell out. What wise man would not welcome her, the very ornament of womanhood, the beloved daughter of Swayambhuva Manu and sister of Uttanapada, who cannot even be perceived by those that have not adored the gracious feet of the Lord, and who has come of her own accord seeking my hand. Therefore I shall take to wife this noble girl, on condition that I shall remain with her till she bears in her womb through me a ray of the Supreme Spirit, or an Ansha avatar, a partial avatar. Thereafter, I am thinking of mostly devoting myself to practices which do not involve destruction of life and characterize the life of a sannyasi, and which have been directly taught to me by the Lord himself. To me, the highest authority in this behalf is the immortal Lord Sri Hari, the ruler even of all Prajapatis, from whom this wonderful universe has emanated, in whom it rests, and in whom again it will disappear. The sage, Maitreya went on, the sage, O Vidura, said only this much and became silent, clinging with his mind to the Lord whose navel is adorned by a lotus. His countenance, which was graced with a smile, captivated the heart of Devahuti. Having further unmistakably known the mind of the queen as well as of Devahuti, the emperor, the queen being Manu's own wife, the emperor most gladly gave away to the sage, who was endowed with hosts of virtues, his daughter, who matched him well. Empress Shatarupa lovingly bestowed on the bride and the bridegroom most valuable presents, suited to the occasion in the form of jewelry, raiment, and other articles intended for household use. Relieved of all agony, the emperor enclosed within his arms his daughter, who had been bestowed on a suitable person, with a heart agitated with extreme fondness for her. Unable to bear separation from her, he shed tears again and again, and drenched with them his daughter's looks, crying, "My daughter, my darling." Bidding adieu to the great sage and obtaining his leave, the monarch mounted his chariot along with his spouse and drove to his capital, followed by his retinue and witnessing the beauty of the hermitages of the tranquil-minded seers on both the charming banks of the Sarasvati, a river so agreeable to sages. Overjoyed to know of his arrival, his subjects sallied forth from Brahmavarta to greet their lord with songs, panegyrics, that's like more songs, songs of kind of praise to a ruler, and instrumental music. The city of Barhishmati, which was the capital of Swayambhuva Manu, which was rich in all kinds of wealth, was so called because it was here that the hair of Lord Vishnu, in the form of the boar, dropped from his body as he shook it, and it was those very hair that turned into blades of the evergreen kusha grass, which is also called Barhish, hence Barhishmati, the name of the city. And kashas, another species of grass used for making mats or roofs, good weaving grass, by means of which the sages got rid of those who interfered with the performance of their sacrifices. That might seem a little bit vague there. What it's saying is by means of making roofs, like those who got rid of their sacrifices being like rain or wind or weather by constructing a thatched roof over the Yajñashala to shelter the Homakund, and worshipped Lord Vishnu. It was here again that the worshipful Manu spread a seat of kushas and kashas and propitiated the Lord presiding over sacrifices, from whom he had secured a footing in the shape of the terrestrial globe. Having arrived at the city of Barhishmati, where Manu resided, he entered his palace there, which drove away the three types of agony. The three types being agony that proceeds from bodily and mental causes internally, agony that proceeds from divine or natural causes like an earthquake or a storm or a disease, something that afflicts you from without, and three, that which is caused by other beings, like a criminal or a predator, or in war. In the company of his wife and children, he enjoyed the pleasures of sense that did not interfere with the pursuit of other objects of human aspiration, meaning he indulged in kama in ways that were not to the detriment of dharma, artha, or moksha. At daybreak every day, celestial musicians, along with their wives, sang in chorus his fair renown, but with a loving heart he listened to the stories of Sri Hari alone. Although Swayambhuva Manu was a past master in the art of creating objects of sense enjoyment, the latter, objects, could not in the least drag him down, devoted as he was to the Lord and given to contemplation. Consequently, his hours, that gradually brought to an end his long life consisting of a whole manvantara, so like millions of years, were not spent in vain, engaged as he ever was in listening to, contemplating on, composing, and narrating the stories of Lord Vishnu. Having transcended the threefold destinies brought about by the preponderance of the three gunas, he thus spent the whole of his manvantara, consisting of 71 rounds of the 4 yugas, in pursuits connected with Lord Vasudeva, such as meditation on his divine form, chanting his names and virtues, worshipping his images, and so on. How can bodily and mental troubles, and those attributable to some divine or human agency, or to other living beings, O Vidura, son of Vyasa, afflict him who has sought refuge with Sri Hari? I have thus narrated to you the wonderful story of the first king, the Adiraja, Swayambhuva Manu, who deserved all praise and who, in reply to the questions asked by certain sages, taught the diverse sacred duties of men in general, as well as of the different varnas and ashramas in particular, friendly disposed as he was to all living beings. That's referring to the Manava Dharma Shastra, or the Manusmriti, which in its original form was spoken by Swayambhuva Manu. Now hear the glory of his daughter, Devahuti. Discourse 23, on the amorous pastimes of Kardama and Devahuti. Maitreya continued. When the parents of Devahuti had left for their capital city, that virtuous girl, who could easily read the mind of her lord, daily attended to his comforts with the same delight as goddess Parvati looks after her consort Lord Shiva. Forswearing lust, deceit, malice, covetousness, vanity, and forbidden acts of every kind, ever vigilant and active, she won the pleasure of her glorious husband through fidelity, purity of mind and body, reverence, control of the senses, service and love, as well as by her affable speech, O Vidura. That daughter of Manu, who looked upon her lord as greater even than Providence and was fully devoted to him, expected great blessings from him. Having served him for a long time, she had grown weak and emaciated on account of her religious observances, since they were doing rigorous fasts together, etc. Kardama was therefore oppressed with a feeling of commiseration for her, and spoke to her in accents faltering with love. Kardama said, O daughter of Manu, you have shown great respect to me, and I am pleased today with your most faithful service and supreme devotion. You ungrudgingly wasted your body for my sake. Wasted your body as in like have been fasting, losing weight, going through physical hardships with doing tapas along with me. Your body, which is extremely dear to all living beings and deserves every attention. I therefore confer on you supernatural vision. Thereby see for yourself the divine blessings that were secured by me through concentrated application to austere penance, samadhi, and worship of God, and through devotion to my own duty. blessings which are free from fear and grief, and to which you have also won a title through services rendered to me. Of what account are other enjoyments, aspirations in regard to which are frustrated by the mere contraction of a brow on the part of the Lord, who possesses infinite power? You have now attained your object. Therefore, enjoy the extensive unearthly pleasures earned through devotion to your duties, and which can be had with difficulty by human beings due to false notions of their royal dignity, etc. When the sage spoke thus, Devahuti felt relieved to discover that he was the master of all yogic powers and an adept in all forms of worship. Her face brightening with a smile and bashful glances, she spoke in voice choked with modesty and love. I know it, my lord, Devahuti said. All that you have said, O chief of the Brahmanas, is something natural to you, a master of unfailing yogic powers that you are, O great one. Now let the promise you made about allowing me the contact of your body but at once be redeemed, for it is a rare boon for virtuous wives to have a progeny through a highly venerable husband. Kindly instruct me what arrangements have to be made and what requisites to be got together, according to the injunctions of the scriptures, here meaning scriptures on erotics, meaning like the Kama Shastra, by resorting to which my poor body, emaciated through intense passion, may be rendered fit for union, smitten as I am with darts of love excited by you. And also think of a suitable house, my lord. Maitreya went on. Seeking to oblige his beloved spouse, the sage Kardama, O Vidura, exercised his wonderful yogic power and instantly produced an aerial mansion which could range at will, so like a flying mansion in the sky. It was a wonderful structure containing all sorts of jewels adorned with pillars of precious stones and capable of yielding whatever one desired, and was equipped with every form of wealth, which tended to multiply in course of time instead of diminishing. It was provided with supernatural articles of domestic use, was comfortable in all seasons, and was decorated with buntings and flags of variegated colors. It was further embellished with wreaths of charming flowers that attracted the sweet humming of bees, as well as with tapestries of linen, silk, and other fabrics of various kinds. The house looked charming with cushions, beds, fans, and seats, separately arranged in the several stories rising one above another. Its beauty was enhanced by works of art here and there, like engravings on the walls and such, and it was provided with pavements of emerald and coral daisies. Or, sorry, no, coral diocese, like coral platforms. Its entrances shone with coral thresholds and had doors of diamond. Its domes of sapphire were crowned with gold pinnacles. With the choicest of rubies set in its diamond walls, it appeared as though possessed of eyes, and it was furnished with wonderful canopies and highly valuable festoons of gold. It resounded with the cries of swans and pigeons, which flew up to their likenesses, thinking them to be their own kind, since there were like birds, swans, and pigeons carved or embellished into the sides of the house so realistically that real birds came to have a look at them. With its pleasure grounds, resting chambers, bedrooms, and inner and outer yards, designed with an eye to comfort, it caused astonishment, as it were, even to the sage himself who had produced it. The sage Kardama, who could read the mind of all living beings, perceived that Devahuti did not regard even such a house with a much delighted heart, and said to her of his own accord, Bathe in the yonder lake, O timid one, and ascend this aerial mansion. Having been consecrated by Lord Vishnu himself, this sacred lake is capable of granting all the desires of human beings. Bowing to that command of her lord, the lotus-eyed princess, who had a soiled cloth, meaning her clothes were dirty, and wore matted locks, and whose frame was coated with a thick layer of dirt and breasts discolored, dived into the lake, which contained the sacred waters of the Sarasvati. Inside the lake, meaning underwater, she saw in a house 1,000 maids, all in the prime of youth and emitting the fragrance of a lotus. Seeing her, the damsel suddenly rose and said to her with joined palms, We are your maidservants. Tell us what we shall do for you. The girls, who showed every respect to the princess, bathed the proud lady with costly oil, perfumed powder, etc., and gave her a pair of new stainless pieces of fine cloth, like an upper and lower garment. Superb, most agreeable and brilliant jewels, food containing all good qualities, and sweet inebriating drinks. Then, in a mirror, she beheld her person rid of dirt, adorned with a garland, clad in unsullied robes, decorated with auspicious marks, and made much of by the maids. Her body had not only been washed up to the neck, but bathed from head to foot and decked with all kinds of ornaments, particularly with a gold ornament about her neck, bangles about her wrists, and tinkling anklets of gold. She had a girdle of gold set with numerous jewels about her hips, and was further adorned with a precious pearl necklace and auspicious materials such as saffron paste and so on. Her countenance shone with beautiful rows of teeth, charming eyebrows, eyes distinguished by lovely and soft corners, and vying with lotus buds, meaning in competing with lotus buds in their beauty, and dark tresses of hair. The moment she thought of her beloved spouse, the foremost of sages, she found herself, along with those damsels, just where the Lord of created beings was. She was amazed to find herself surrounded by 1,000 maids in the presence of her husband and to witness his yogic power. The sage perceived that Devahuti had washed herself clean and shone forth as though she was no longer her former self. She had regained her original beauty, was clad in excellent robes, her charming breasts duly wrapped round, and was waited upon by 1,000 Vidyadhara girls. He conceived a fondness for her and helped her to ascend the aerial mansion, O destroyer of enemy in the form of passion. Though attached to his beloved consort and with Vidyadhara damsels ministering to his bodily comfort, the sage did not lose his glory in his self-control, the glory of his self-control, and shone in that aerial mansion as charming as the moon with his consort, the star Rohini, the star goddess, the wife of Somadeva, in the midst of the other lunar mansions in the vault of heavens, causing rows of lilies to open. Waited upon by a bevy of charming damsels and extolled by hosts of siddhas, he reveled in the aerial mansion like Kubera for long, long years over the valleys of Mount Meru, the pleasure ground of the guardians of the 4 quarters and the 4 intermediate points of the compass. Those are the Ashtadikpalikas, Indra, Agni, Yama, Nirti, Varuna, Vayu. The north point is sometimes said as Kubera, sometimes as Soma, and Ishana, form of Shiva. Valleys which are rendered all the more delightful by, and each of them has a city on top of Mount Meru, and also each of them has like pleasure valleys surrounding Mount Meru in the 8 directions of the compass. That's all going to be described more later on. Valleys which are rendered all the more delightful by cool, gentle, and fragrant breezes that stimulate passion and echo the auspicious sound of the fall of the heavenly stream. The fall of the heavenly stream there, that's a reference to, we'll get later to descriptions of Mount Meru in detail. It's not a mountain like mountains of our Earth. It's a totally otherworldly structure, like it's wider at the top than at the base. It's not remotely shaped like a mountain of our Earth. It's a very different thing. And 4 waterfalls of the Ganga fall off of it at the 4 cardinal points. That's what echoing the auspicious sound of the fall of the heavenly stream is referencing when they're flying over these valleys. Similarly, he, Kardama, fondly enjoyed himself with his wife in the following celestial gardens: Vaishrambhaka, Surasana, Nandana, Pushpabhadra, and Chaitraratya. Those are various celestial gardens, as well as over the Manasarovara lake. Coursing through the various spheres as the air on that brilliant and great aerial mansion that could fly at will, Kardama surpassed even the gods coursing through the air. What is difficult of achievement for those self-possessed men who have taken refuge in the feet of the Lord, feet that are the source of sacred rivers and put an end to the sorrows of mundane life. Having shown to his wife the whole extent of the terrestrial globe, which is full of many wonders because of its arrangement, Kardama, the great yogi, returned to his own hermitage. In order to delight his spouse Devahuti, who longed for sexual pleasure, the sage divided his self into 9 and enjoyed himself for years together as if it was for an hour only. I guess essentially meaning he lined up 9 of himself so that 8 of them could be recovering and 1 of them could almost always be engaging in sexual pleasure with her. Sharing with her most handsome lord the excellent and delightful bed in that aerial mansion, she did not notice the passing away of that long period. While the couple, who eagerly longed for the pleasures of sense, were thus enjoying themselves by virtue of yogic powers, 100 autumns passed like a brief space of time, 100 years. Frequently in Sanskrit, 100 years will be expressed as 100 autumns because in Sanskrit, 100 autumns is sharadashatam, and it kind of has a nice poetic ring to it to say 100 autumns. That's why they often do that. Lovingly regarding her as a counterpart of his own self, the enlightened sage who could read the thoughts of all and was also capable of granting their wishes, divided himself into 9 and impregnated her. Immediately afterwards, the said Devahuti bore on the same day 9 female issues, 9 daughters, after a pregnancy of less than 1 day, which sounds convenient, who were all charming of every limb and breathed the fragrance of a red lotus, like their breath smelled like a red lotus flower. Thereafter, when she found her lord about to leave the home as a recluse, according to the agreement they made at their wedding, the virtuous lady, who yet longed for a male child, scratched the ground with her foot, radiant with the luster of its gem-like nails, her head bent low, and suppressing her tears, she spoke in slow yet winning accents with an agitated and aching heart, though wearing a smile on her face. Devahuti said, "Your venerable self has redeemed all the promises made to me, yet be pleased to grant me immunity from fear, since I have taken refuge in you. Your daughters, O holy sage, will have to find a suitable match for themselves, and there must be someone to rid me of sorrow when you have left for the woods. Enough with the time that has so far been spent by me in enjoying the objects of senses, ignoring the Supreme Spirit. Not knowing your transcendent glory, I have loved you while remaining attached to the objects of the senses. Let the affinity I have borne to you nonetheless rid me of all fear. The same love which, when bestowed on the wicked through ignorance, is conducive to rebirth, rids one of all attachment when it is directed towards holy men. He whose activity in this world neither tends to religious merit, nor to dispassion, nor to the service of the Lord, whose feet are the source of all sacred pleasures, is verily dead though living. Indeed, I have been badly deceived by the Lord's Maya, in that I failed to seek liberation from the bondage of mundane life, even after securing you, the bestower of final beatitude." Thus ends the 23rd discourse, forming part of the narrative of Lord Kapila in Book 3 of the great and glorious Bhagavata Purana, otherwise known as the Paramahansa Samhita. I'm thinking that could be a good stopping point. It's a little bit after 10. And the next discourse kind of leads right into the one following. I mean, so does this one. But once we get into the birth of Kapila and Kapila's relationship with his mother, that kind of forms its own next self-contained story. So I think it might be good to have that all together.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you so much, Devla. Thank you so much, Radhaji.
There is any welcome. It's actually all together greatness. So is there any comments or any questions or your own experience?
Are you asking me or are you asking
anyone? We can have a little satsang. I think that makes it nice. If you feel like for singing, I don't know, just anything is good.
Whatever people want.
I think Andy can sing.
How is your sister?
Andy can sing.
How is your sister?
It was somehow like today. I was just thinking that sometimes Andy looks like the Krishna chant person, and just while we were doing this, it just occurred to me that someday we would like to hear him. That could be now.
We sang that day so beautifully with guitar.
Yeah, on Holy.
Yeah, Holy Night.
Thank you, Dr. N.
Go ahead. We are waiting.
I'm
Oh,
impressed that you could tell just from looking at him that he was a good singer.
Yes.
He is.
wow. That's super sweet. Thank you.
Whatever, you know, like just let us bathe in your bhakti.
You're so sweet. Well, do something simple.
Whatever you
Some-
want.
Anything, Andy. It's
How about,
beautiful. I mean, it occurred to me this while we were having Devala share his things, and I'm like, you know, it will be good to hear someday. I was going to propose it, you know, your chant, your bhakti. So whatever comes into this moment, that should be all perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
actually there is we're planning to have a kirtan soon, and we did already one, but we have to plan it properly one day, and then we can do a Zoom kirtan one day. So yeah, go ahead, Andy.
well, let me do this one quickly.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. That's one of my
Thank you.
favorites.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know,
Thank you.
I play harmonium
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
and I play sitar also. I'm not a
Ooh.
professional. Like, we just learned it in a childhood, as you always hear the stories, right?
Oh, yeah.
Not professional, but every now and then I will bring it out. And these are one of our favorite ones because it goes with the rhythm. So someday, yes, when I come to Iowa in the future, I think whenever it opens up for this program, that Ayurvedic program that I am there at MIU, we would have to come for the clinical, and I'll be happy we could put up something together, some kirtan together.
Jay Ganesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so be it. So it is.
You
Let's
can
do
sing
that.
one now.
Me?
Sure.
If you want to.
Please.
It's not coming.
You don't have to, no pressure.
Another time.
You know, there is just a simple one, right? That जग में सुंदर है दो नाम, चाहे कृष्ण कहो या राम, बोलो राम राम राम, बोलो श्याम श्याम श्याम, बोलो राम राम राम, बोलो श्याम श्याम श्याम। माखन ब्रिज में एक चुराई, एक बेर बिलिनी के खाए। I forgot the other words. but
That was beautiful.
that is right. So it's
Very
basically right, the Krishna or the Ram, right?
Yeah.
They were into the different eras, but this one can lead to the beautiful, like as with Andy or with anybody, we could just go whenever we do it in person.
You're beautiful. So beautiful. I love that.
And we do with the Manjira. I do a different versions too, like I would put it in with whatever the tempo is going on. As we say, that not professional, but I would love to get back
You
to it.
sing. I love it.
cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and all of you who wants to be ready for that end of 2022 for the India trip, just making an informal group. I think there are so many more who are like joining. So
I'm
keep your
interested.
timeline.
I'm interested.
If everything's going fine, because right now I think in India also the cases are rising, but I'm just targeting end of 2022, and we could just do like the informal group together, and it would be nice.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
that'd be great.
Yeah, right.
Beautiful. So thank you, Vashi, Dr. Vashi, Dr. Nisha, sorry. Where is Vashi ji?
we both are, we are sisters, right? But everybody says that we are one soul and two bodies. So it is perfectly okay. Vasvi was in the transit between her daughters. They have the other house in Virginia too, and then in Pittsburgh. So I think they are during the drive time right now, whether they're driving or something. Yeah. So it was, I think they went after having the vaccine, they went to see their grandchildren in Virginia.
Nice.
So yeah, but she's always, she's so much enlightened. She's just love and joy. That's all.
Nice.
Thank you. So beautiful. Dr. Nisha, also greet your husband.
Definitely. Yes.
He is also one of the lights. So
yes.
And yeah, all of them.
All of you are.
So we do a kirtan, okay, soon, very soon. And there are other people that want to join the kirtan. So yeah.
And it will be also like, I'm not pushing anything, but sometimes like just a simple chants.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
Just doesn't have to be right. And we could just do the simple chant. And one of my favorite one is always.
Devala can do a chant right now. He knows it by heart.
Yes, Devala.
Which one?
Right. Yes.
Which one do you want?
Krishna Damodar.
Damodarashtakam?
Yeah,
okay. I can do Damodarashtakam.
Yes.
Okay. Om Sri Damodarashtakam Nahamishwaram Satchidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Vrajamanam Yashodabhiyoku Khaladavamanam Paramrastam Atyantato Drutya Gopya Rudantam Muhurnetra Yugmam Rajantam Karam Bhoja Yugmena Shatanga Netram Muhushvasakam Patrire Kanta Kanta Stiti Graivam Damodaram Bhakti Badham Iti Driksvalila Bhira Nanda Kunde Svaghosham Nimajantam Akyapayantam Tadiye Shitagne Subhaktairjitatvam Punah Prema Tascham Shatavritti Vande Varam Deva Moksham Na Moksha Vidhim Va Na Chanyam Vraneham Vare Shad Apiha Idam Deva Purnata Gopala Balam Sadame Manasya Virastam Kim Anyai Idam te mukham bhojam atyanta nilar vratam kuntalai snigdharaktais chagopya muhushtum mitam bimbarakta dharame manasya virastam alam laksha labhaye Namo Deva Damodara Ananta Vishnu Prasiddha Prabodhinni Jallabdimagnam Krapa Drashti Vrashtayi Dinam Batanu Grahane Shyamam Agnyamedhyakshi Drishva Kuveratmajho Bhaddha Muritvaya Yadvat Tvaya Mochidho Bhakti Badho Krataucha Tata Prema Bhaktim Svakam He Prachaya Namokshe Graho Me Stidhamodareha Namaste Studamne Spodad Dipti Dhamne Tvadiyo Darayata Vishvasya Dhamne Namo Radhikaye Tvedaye Preyaye Namo Nantalilaya Devaya Tubhyam.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Divine, very
Very
divine.
divine.
That was so divine, so beautiful, so beautiful. You know, it
Dr. Misha,
reminded.
Go
Ji?
back. No, we sung on Holy Night, so we have to definitely come together and do one like this. So he did this 2 times that night.
Wow.
Yeah, Radha asked me to do it again.
You know, the
That's
tempo made me, because I do the classical Indian dance too. So the
nice.
tempo was, I literally began moving from, you know, those vibrations, right? Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
literally begin moving from
Mhm.
with the words, with the namo, right? So it's beautiful. Someday,
You're
and
supposed to do that, right? When you do a mantra, it's supposed to bring forms and connections and
Right.
uplift you towards.
Right.
It's in one of the traditional meters. So yeah, they're like like the classical Indian dance. It's one of the meters that it's built on. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Bharatanatyam. This is for Chandra.
right.
Chandra is today not here, but
Right. So I do the Kathak. I don't.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
not. We learned Bharatanatyam in a childhood. Once we came here, I couldn't find anybody for the Bharatanatyam, so I went towards the Kathak side. But as you say, that the tempo and the words, and when you know that whole meaning, it's just the body movement with what we call is a lashya, also, right? The
Yes.
expressions and I was internally moving. So
Yeah.
someday it will be good, you know, for all of us to get together and do something together. Nice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we about Bharatanatyam, Chandra is also Bharatanatyam teacher and dancer. She is also in the group. One day she can talk and maybe perform for us.
Oh wow.
Right.
Anyway, I'm gonna log out. I want to greet everybody and thank everybody, Dr. Nisha, and please regards to your sister also, Dr. Washi. And thank you so much.
Right. And thank you so much. And
Thank you, Devala.
we'll meet again.
Yeah, Devalat was beautiful. We are in heavens right now.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Yes.
So nice.
Very beautiful.
All right.
Right.
All right.
Thank
See you next week.
Sorry, Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Very good.